On November 24th, around 10 p.m., a major construction accident occurred in Anzi County, Shanxi Province, resulting in 7 deaths. The accident happened at a railway logistics company worksite run by state-owned Shanxi Yongxin Tonghai Railway Logistics Limited Company. A concrete beam slab collapsed during pouring at the 28.5-meter mark of an extra-tall scaffolding structure. This caused the entire scaffolding to collapse, sending 6 workers and 1 concrete pump truck commander plunging to the bottom, where they were buried and killed by steel bars and hardening concrete. The complex entanglement of large steel bars and nearly set concrete at the scene made rescue efforts extremely difficult. Meanwhile, the risk of secondary collapses from unstable scaffolding overhead posed further hazards to rescuers. By the 25th, all 7 victims had been confirmed dead. At the time of the incident, concrete was being poured for the 28.5-meter section of an industrial coal shed, one in a row of 8 tall columnar buildings arranged in a straight line at the site. The top planking gave out on the first building, causing the deadly cascading collapse. Rescuers erected protective wooden boards to shield the precarious rescue area from potential secondary scaffolding collapses overhead. The scaffolding catastrophe underscores the extreme danger of faults and errors in extra-tall scaffolding projects. At heights above 28 meters, no aspect of design, inspection, implementation, or supervision can afford the slightest carelessness. Collapses at such heights inevitably mean massive loss of life, as hardened concrete renders rescue attempts extremely difficult. For those who are familiar with the term China's Tofu Dreg construction, this phenomenon is nothing new. What is surprising here is that not only the bad material and the cutting corners that the Chinese authorities are using to intentionally destroy the structures, but the scaffold, the frame for the workers to build the structure, are made of tofu as well. On December 4th in Hubei, the scaffolding the workers were working on was about to collapse, and an uncle passing by hurriedly stepped forward to hold it up. Seeing this scene, everyone rushed to help. These are just a few lucky examples of early prevention. Many cases are not so lucky. In July, a scaffolding collapsed in Harbin and hit many people. The injured were sent to multiple hospitals. According to merchants, the scaffolding has been built just a month. This really shows how vulnerable the life of common Chinese citizens is. China's Tofu Dreg constructions, greed, haste, and negligence underpinning national tragedy. An unsettling spectacle has become increasingly common across China's skylines. Buildings and bridges crumbling without warning, cranes capsizing mid-project, schools pancaking during class sessions. Investigations into these macabre collapses have singled out shoddily erected Tofu Dreg constructions as responsible for countless casualties. Rather than isolated incidents, these frequent failings reflect an underlying blueprint for disaster rooted in misalignment of economic incentives and an absence of accountability. Cutting corners. Insatiable profit motive compromises safety standards. The seeds of tragedy are sown when construction bids prioritize profit over all else. Developers and contractors promise impossibly low budgets, locking themselves into unrealistic constraints. Corners inevitably get cut. Safety precautions dismissed as acceptable collateral damage. By exploiting human lives to pad their bottom line, greedy players set the stage for instability. Structures arise, balanced precariously on a shaky foundation of ethical compromises. On June 11th, a gantry crane at the Wuhu shipyard in Anhui overturned due to strong winds and crushed the security pavilion, killing 3 people. Even tower cranes in China are getting their corners cut. Another crane collapse in China. In October, a crane collapsed at a construction site in Xi'an district, Ganzhou, causing a battery vehicle passing by to be crushed. Apparently, if it can be built, then it can be cut corners. On December 9th, in Chongqing, a crane rolled over while working at a construction site, and a steel support hit a viaduct. Workers panicked and fled in a hurry. You know the situation in China is bad when even their machine used to build their tofu construction is also tofu itself. The greed of the people involved in the building of a structure can cause insufferable pain and loss. Road collapse scene of the Yangtze River Highway Bridge in eastern Hubei. A truck fell and rolled over. The 8 lanes of the highway below were blocked. This level of quality can only be found in China. Investigations into collapses often point to economic forces placing cost efficiency over caution. For public infrastructure projects, long chains of subcontractors each shave funds to increase margins. By the time each small construction crew receives their budget allocation, almost nothing remains for actual materials and labor. As a result, untrained migrant workers lacking technical expertise get assigned complex roles. Predictably, their inexperience breeds mistakes that spiral into catastrophic failures. These dynamics illuminate profit-first motives, where maximizing financial gain matters more than engineering sound buildings that serve society. In essence, competitive underbidding predicated entirely on minimizing expenses engenders dangerous trade-offs down the line. Eventually, human lives bear the burden of graft disguised as efficiency. Hasty construction timelines. China's breakneck pace undercuts safety. Alongside distorted economics, impossible project deadlines also hamper construction quality. Chinese builders pride themselves on unprecedented speed, adhering to schedules dictated by competitive ambitions rather than calibrated safe targets. County Garden and other major developers religiously follow rapid capital turnover models that compress feasibility studies, permits, materials procurement, and construction into alarmingly brief 6-month periods. On August 25th, the roadbed at the back of the Xi'an Expressway in Shanxi collapsed. On July 6th, Xinhua, Hunan. The exterior wall of the 32-story building fell off. 4 people were injured and sent to hospital. November 14th, Xi'an County, Hubei Province. The sudden collapse of the house frightened everyone. Firefighters have rushed to the scene to deal with it. On November 6th, the Municipal Emergency Management Bureau responded to the ceiling collapse of Nanjing Drum Tower Hospital. 1 person was injured, and staff rushed to the scene. The consequences of racing against the clock manifest plainly across building sites, where contractors are goaded into skipping necessary wait times and safety reviews in favor of immediate completion. At Country Garden properties, builders are exhorted to work aggressively rain or shine, day and night, eschewing basics precautions like allowing concrete foundations to properly cure before stacking multiple stories atop them. Such reckless velocity serves corporate balance sheets while endangering human safety. A man broke 215 stone pillars of guardrail with 1 kick in Feirui River. Chinese construction quality is worse than tofu. Gaping regulatory loopholes and toothless enforcement enable negligence. While economic urgency provides motive and unchecked deadlines the means for catastrophe, regulatory negligence furnishes opportunity for violations. Despite construction comprising a full 8% of China's GDP, regulatory institutions have failed to keep pace. National safety regulations remain loose, and local enforcement lacks teeth, enabling audacious compromises in materials and methods. Developers bank on the low probability of being caught or meaningfully sanctioned for cutting corners, skirting compliance demands. On July 31st, the Shaoqing River Bridge in Beijing collapsed, causing 5 cars to fall into the water. On June 8th, the Emergency Management Bureau of Nanxiang City, Shaoguan, Guangdong Province, received reports that part of the Shuixi Bridge in the suburbs of Zhengxiongzhou Subdistrict collapsed. As you can see, just a little small wave can collapse a concrete bridge. On August 5th, the guardrail of the cross-provincial Yellow River Bridge, which has been open to traffic for more than half a year, was blown down by wind. Yes, a concrete guardrail was blown down by wind. Furthermore, oversight that does occur operates as theater, warning of collapse rather than preventing it. Reports indicate that housing regulators frequently document and flag grave structural issues, including subsidence and cracking years in advance, but fail to compel developers to undertake preemptive demolition or major restorative works. In this environment of complicit negligence and gaping unenforced violations, dangerously constructed death traps are allowed to persist literally overhead of unsuspecting citizens until gravity takes its toll. Human toll of Tofu Dreg projects mounts in traumatized Chinese society. As the list of casualties from collapsed bridges, toppling cranes, and pancaked schools continues to lengthen across China, the distinctly human impacts of the ongoing Tofu Dreg construction crisis come into stark relief. The traumatic loss suffered by affected families highlights deficiencies plaguing China's infrastructure explosion, from inadequate safety protocols causing preventable deaths to lack of accountability measures providing closure. Quantifying the exact death toll of shoddily engineered public works is difficult due to underreporting and whitewashing of causes by officials. Yet analyses indicate thousands have already lost their lives prematurely due to infrastructure failures, with children disproportionately affected in school collapses. Experts forecast this figure may eclipse even automobile accidents as the leading public safety issue without an urgent shift addressing inherent build quality issues. Beyond lives cruelly cut short, demolished properties translate into massive financial loss for Chinese individuals and society overall. In June, terrified homeowners in Jiangsu fled tilting high-rises as window-shattering fissures tore through their newly built community overnight. Such scenes play out annually nationwide, gutting the life-saving citizens invested to secure homes that are rendered uninhabitable death traps. Rectifying complexes compromised by sinking foundations or pervasive cracking strains, local government coffers. On October 9th, in Kujiang District, Shaoguan City, the scaffolding collapse resulted in 2 people lost their life and 3 injured. The survivors of collapsed constructions suffer profound emotional trauma channeled into grassroots activism and online outrage. Grieving parents turn to social media seeking accountability from officials who downplay disasters as unavoidable accidents while quashing investigations. Petitions to honor lost loved ones with on-site memorials meet suppression from authorities primarily concerned with removing blemishes marring China's infrastructure ambitions. State obstruction of victims' quests for basic recognition prolongs psychological pain by negating closure. On May 4th, in Hengyang, Hunan Province, a man went out to work, and suddenly his house collapsed, killing his parents, wife, and child. The child was only a few months old. The untold suffering stemming from infrastructural failings won't be stemmed without restoring public trust broken by deaths and deception. While loss and trauma inflicted can never fully be remedied, a good-faith ground-up movement placing transparency and accountability over saving face would mark a constructive step. Until then, Chinese citizens will continue enduring the painful loss and financial blows of hastily built tofu dregs, one collapse at a time. Citizen distrust boils into anger over preventable construction tragedy. Recent high-profile building collapses across China have spurred waves of public protests, united by citizens' profound frustration over the loss of life stemming from institutional failings. Demonstrators channel raw anger and grief into demands for infrastructure reform and accountability from officials who prioritize image over addressing systemic construction issues. With trust in governance declining sharply, authorities increasingly resort to suppression to contain outrage. If your unfinished house looks like this, do you want to protest? Such a cycle of distrust and unrest stirred following the collapse of a school gymnasium in Jiangsu in July, which claimed the lives of 11 individuals, including young athletes. Yet beyond mourning losses, the victims' relatives organized unprecedented mass demonstrations, decrying perceived government indifference towards recurring infrastructure disasters nationwide. Pointed slogans underscored protesters' conviction that corruption and cover-ups were to blame for thousands killed in preventable building failures. If nothing is done, every house of common citizens will have this level of quality. Or worse. Authorities responded to the vocal school collapse backlash by swiftly imposing a media blackout and removing unauthorized memorials according to observers. Riot squads kept grieving parents under surveillance at the hospital during victims' last hours, perceived as focused on heading off protests over consoling bereaved families by attendees. Distrust deepened as officials offered no viable avenues for securing accountability or satisfactory closure through independent investigation. The exterior wall of the building is cracked. You can see cardboard as part of the house material. Also, there is a huge water leakage in the room. The tension between civil demands for infrastructure reform and authoritarian systems prioritizing control plays out across civil society channels. Censors raced to restrain online outrage by deleting content or shutting down accounts of collapse whistleblowers. Police clamped down on physical commemorations for collapse victims, as such sites grow into lightning rods for public anger. Unable to forget soaring death tolls from decrepit schools, dubious high-rise housing, or fatal transit projects, citizens bitterly note the rapid demolition of dissent monuments. This is what happens when greedy officials choose to use cardboard instead of actual concrete. This is the house we purchased for over $1,000,000. Is this structure built with substandard materials? Take a look. You can see that even the steel reinforcements have deteriorated like this. It might be more sensible to rent a place elsewhere. This cycle of citizen demands for accountability suppressed through authoritarian means further degrades China's social fabric. Each censored expose, deleted protest images, or erased memorial stone chips away at basic trust in infrastructure safety and governance. A long-term solution for shoring up China's cracked infrastructure requires officials to remedy root causes rather than blot out cries for investigation and justice. For the freshly grieving walking among fragile structural skeletons, however, the pathway towards concrete change remains obscured.